Think you know Henry VIII, the oversized king with 6 unlucky wives and a drumstick always in hand? Think again. The version you read about in textbooks is polished, censored, and almost completely false. Behind the portraits and legends hides a man so grotesque, so cruel, and so broken that even horror movie villains pale in comparison. What I'm about to tell you has been buried for centuries. The disease that made his body rot alive, the humiliation he inflicted on women who couldn't escape him, and the disturbing bedroom secrets that his court desperately tried to erase. In the next 15 minutes, I'll uncover 5 dark truths about Henry VIII's private life. Secrets so extreme they'll permanently change how you see one of history's most famous kings. And trust me, the 5th one is so unsettling, I had to cross-check it multiple times just to make sure it wasn't myth. Let's pull back the curtain. 1. The rotting body of a King Henry VIII wasn't just heavyset and red-faced, he was literally decaying while alive. By the mid-1530s, his legs were covered in ulcerated sores that never healed. They oozed constantly, reeking of infection so badly that courtiers burned mountains of perfume just to survive being near him. Imagine being Anne Boleyn, forced to sleep beside a husband whose body smelled like a corpse and whose wounds squelched with every movement. Servants fainted or vomited when they changed his bandages. Historians now believe he suffered from chronic bone infection, which causes not only unbearable pain, but also bouts of rage and paranoia. His legendary temper wasn't just arrogance. It was the howl of a man whose bones were disintegrating inside his body. Anne Boleyn herself allegedly complained that she could hear his joints snapping in the night. Sleeping next to him wasn't intimacy. It was psychological torture. To marriage as psychological warfare, forget love stories. Henry's marriages were elaborate arenas of humiliation. Take Anne Boleyn. Her downfall wasn't just about treason or adultery. Henry staged the ultimate public shaming. He accused her of incest with her own brother, forced her to watch him be executed, and then paraded her reputation as filth before the entire kingdom. The cruelty didn't stop there. Young Elizabeth, Anne's daughter, had to witness her mother branded as a witch and traitor. Witnesses wrote that Henry smirked and even laughed during Anne's trial. This wasn't justice. It was sadism disguised as law. And Catherine Howard, barely out of her teens, she was married off to this monstrous man. Servants heard her sobbing through the palace walls, night after night, knowing she couldn't refuse his summons. Henry's cruelty was never just physical. It was psychological theater designed to break women completely before destroying them. 3 rituals of a broken mind. Henry's nightly routines were as bizarre as they were revolting. Before he could crawl into bed, servants drained his ulcers, rubbed perfumed oils into his sores, and strapped his legs to prevent his wounds from tearing open. This was all before his wives were even allowed near him. But his paranoia twisted things further. He feared being poisoned through touch. So he made his wives undergo humiliating purity tests. Catherine of Aragon, for instance, was forced to lick her own hands to prove she wasn't coated with poison. And when his body failed him in the bedroom, he turned to religious objects. Crucifixes, holy oils, sanctified linens. Henry convinced himself that God was cursing his manhood and tried to pray his way out of failure. These weren't royal traditions. They were the desperate rituals of a diseased, paranoid man whose power couldn't save him from humiliation. For the ultimate humiliation behind the walls of his palace, Henry's greatest weakness was no secret. By his 40s, his body could no longer function as a husband should. His obesity, infection, and psychological breakdown left him impotent. The king who demanded heirs couldn't produce them. But instead of admitting the truth, he turned his rage outward. He blamed his wives, accused them of adultery, and executed anyone who threatened to expose his weakness. Catherine Howard's supposed betrayal, almost certainly fabricated to explain why she wasn't pregnant. Servants reported nights of screaming tantrums, furniture thrown across the room, and threats of execution hurled at anyone nearby. Henry even believed killing enough people might earn him God's forgiveness and his virility back. Historians note that executions skyrocketed after his failures became undeniable. Anne of Cleves, wisely, got out with an annulment before she could become the next victim of his shame. 5. The monster's legacy. Here's the part history class will never tell you. Henry's broken body and bedroom failures didn't just ruin his wives' lives, they reshaped the world. His desperate search for someone to blame led to England's break with Rome. The Protestant Reformation in England wasn't a noble stand against the Pope. It was a cover for one man's humiliation. Wars of religion, massacres, centuries of persecution. Millions died because a king couldn't admit his body was failing him. Henry's cruelty became a template for dictators to come. Blame others for your weakness. Destroy anyone who threatens your image. Rewrite reality so you always look strong. From Stalin to modern strongmen, the playbook is pure Henry VIII. He longed to be remembered as England's greatest monarch. Instead, he became a symbol of how insecurity, cruelty, and unchecked power rot men from the inside out. His decaying body was a mirror of his decaying soul, and his shadow still lingers over the way power and masculinity are abused today. There it is, the truth about Henry VIII your teachers never shared. Not the jolly king with turkey legs, but a rotting, paranoid tyrant whose failures destroyed lives and reshaped history.